Whiskey Town, Episode 7, The Girl in the Forest. The sun had barely risen over Whiskey Town. The first light of dawn filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the dirt roads and empty storefronts. Ethan Cole, sheriff of Whiskey, stood at the edge of the Deadwood Forest, his eyes fixed on the place where a woman's body had been found just days earlier. The forest loomed like a dark sentinel, its ancient trees whispering secrets in the wind. Ethan had seen many things in his time as sheriff: fights, robberies, even murder, but this one felt different. The girl had been found hanging from a tree, her life stolen without a trace of remorse. And yet, there was something about this death that gnawed at him, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. Ethan shifted his weight, his boots crunching on the leaves beneath him. He wasn't alone. Beside him stood Clara, the town's only journalist and the only person who seemed to believe that Whiskey Town could still find its way to the truth. She had been with him from the start, and today was no different. "Anything?" Clara asked, her voice soft but sharp with curiosity. Ethan shook his head. "Not yet. Just the same feeling. Something doesn't sit right with me." Clara looked out into the woods, her brow furrowing. "You think it was a suicide?" "No," Ethan replied, his voice low, almost grim. "I think someone's trying to cover something up. This doesn't feel like the work of someone who gave up. It feels like a message." A sudden gust of wind swept through the trees, sending a shiver down Ethan's spine. He could almost feel the weight of the forest pressing in on him, a reminder of how much it had witnessed over the years. Whiskey Town had its secrets, and the forest knew them all. But today, it seemed to hold one more. The day moved slowly, as they continued their investigation into the death of Emily Turner. The town had been shaken by her tragic end, but as always, people whispered more than they spoke openly. Emily had only been in town for a few months, a quiet woman who kept to herself. Her life was a blank page in Whiskey's book, and no one seemed to know much about her. Ethan and Clara had started by speaking to those who might have known her best, the people who worked with her at the local cafe. The owner, Mrs. Hargrove, had little to say about Emily. Other than that, she was a hard worker and always kept to herself. She was never one to cause trouble, Mrs. Hargrove told them, wiping her hands on her apron. "Just came in, did her job, went home. That's all I know." Clara took down notes, but Ethan wasn't convinced. He had learned over the years that people often had a way of hiding things, especially in a small town like Whiskey. He asked Mrs. Hargrove about any strange behavior or anyone who might have been close to Emily. "Not really," Mrs. Hargrove said, hesitating for a moment. "She did mention someone, Gregory Blackwell. He came around a lot. I'd see them talking sometimes, but that's all I know." Ethan's ears perked up. Gregory Blackwell was a name he knew well, a local farmer with a reputation for being a bit too friendly with the town's younger women. Ethan had suspected something was off with Blackwell for some time, but nothing concrete ever came up. Later that evening, Ethan and Clara sat across from Gregory Blackwell in his small farmhouse. Blackwell was a tall, broad-shouldered man with rough hands and a face that had seen too many years under the unforgiving sun. He greeted them with a slow smile, but Ethan could see the unease in his eyes. "Evening, Sheriff," Blackwell said, his voice gravelly. "What brings you out here?" "We need to talk about Emily Turner," Ethan replied, keeping his tone steady. "We've heard you were friendly with her." Gregory's eyes flickered. "Friendly?" He scratched his beard, a nervous gesture. "I spoke to her a few times. Sure, but we weren't close." She didn't mention anything about anyone threatening her, Clara asked, her voice sharp. Blackwell shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable. No, I don't think so. We talked a little. Nothing out of the ordinary. She was just quiet. Ethan wasn't buying it. You sure about that? Blackwell hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, Sheriff, I'm sure. Clara shot Ethan a look, and he knew they were on the right track, but Blackwell was too smooth. The more they pressed, the more he clammed up. They left his house with nothing but more questions. The next day, they received a break in the case. Lena, a friend of Emily's, came forward with new information. Lena told Ethan and Clara that Emily had been acting strangely the night she disappeared. She got a phone call, Lena said, her voice trembling. She didn't want to tell me who it was, but she was scared. She kept looking out the window, like someone was watching her. After the call, she just left. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now... Do you remember what she said? Clara pressed. No, Lena replied, shaking her head. But she was upset. I think whoever called her knew something. Maybe they were watching her. Ethan's mind raced. There was a connection here, a thread that was starting to unravel. Emily's life had been simple, but someone had come into it, and whatever they wanted had cost her her life. It was time to confront someone who had been around when Emily was alive, Victor Carlson, a carpenter who worked on various homes in the area. When Ethan and Clara approached Victor, he seemed unfazed. He was a big man with calloused hands, a hard worker who had been in whiskey for years, but there was something about him that felt off. He didn't meet their eyes, and his answers were short. You were with Emily the night she disappeared, Ethan said, watching him closely. What happened? Victor sighed, shifting uncomfortably. She came by to talk about some work. I didn't think anything of it. We argued a little, but it wasn't anything serious. She left after that. That's all I know. Clara pressed harder. Was there any reason she would leave like that? Was someone threatening her? Victor's gaze faltered. He opened his mouth but no words came out at first. Finally, he spoke. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. She wouldn't stop. She wouldn't stop asking questions. About me, about the things I'd done. I never wanted to hurt her. Victor dropped his head, his voice breaking. I pushed her. She fell, hit her head on the corner of the table. I didn't mean to kill her. I panicked. I didn't know what to do, so I took her out to the woods, hung her up to make it look like something else. The confession hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. Victor Carlson was arrested later that night, and the case was closed. But as Ethan stood outside the sheriff's office, the weight of the town's secrets pressed heavily on him. This wasn't just about one death. It was about the choices we make when pushed to the edge. It was about the lies we tell ourselves and the things we hide, thinking no one will ever find out. As Ethan walked back to his home, he couldn't help but reflect on what he'd learned when anger, fear, and guilt take over. They leave a trail of destruction in their wake. It was a reminder to him, and to everyone in Whiskey Town, that even the smallest choices could have the biggest consequences. That night, Ethan sat alone at his kitchen table, a glass of whiskey in front of him. He stared into the amber liquid, the dark shadows of the room surrounding him. The case was over. The killer was caught. But the lesson lingered. Victor Carlson hadn't been a monster. He had been a man pushed too far by fear and guilt, the kind of fear that made him lie to himself and think that killing Emily was the only way out. But that wasn't the way. In the end, it wasn't the things we hide that get us in trouble. It's the things we refuse to face.